This episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by our friends at Compassion International. We love the partnership that we have with Compassion. We love what they stand for, releasing children from poverty in Jesus' name. And right now, you can go to compassion.com/sports spectrum. There are children right there when you go to that website who've been waiting for more than a year. In some cases, some over 660 days. They've been waiting for a sponsorship, for an opportunity, for a chance, for you and I to step up, team up with Compassion, and help release these kids from poverty. And for $38 a month, it's tax deductible. It connects you with a child living in poverty, and your support provides medical checkups, nutritious food, health and hygiene training, educational assistance, mentoring, and most important of all, every child will hear about Jesus Christ and be encouraged to develop a lifelong relationship with God. You can learn more at compassion.com/sports spectrum. You'll see a list of children there. You can sponsor that child right now, or you can pray about it, talk about it with your family, and help release a kid from poverty in Jesus' name. Compassion International. Check them out at compassion.com/sports spectrum.
This is Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
And welcome to the show, everyone. I am Jason Romano. It is great to have you tuning in today here on a Monday on Sports Spectrum, and I'm excited for today's conversation with Atlanta Braves team chaplain Terry Evans. It's coming up in just a second. First, I want to tell you about our brand new 52-week Increase devotional. Check it out at theincrease.com and consider it as a resource for you as you grow closer to God in 2022. The Increase 52-week devotional, stories from the world of pro sports. Many of the conversations took place right here on Sports Spectrum, and you can check it out right now at theincrease.com. Theincrease.com. All right, Terry Evans is the chaplain for the world champion Atlanta Braves. Terry serves with Unlimited Potential Incorporated, UPI. He's also a former professional baseball player who played 11 seasons in the minors and parts of 3 seasons in the major leagues with the Cardinals, Angels, Giants, and Royals. He is now serving as the team chaplain with the Atlanta Braves, and this is a great conversation about Terry's journey, but also about being a part of a world championship team. Take a listen to Terry Evans, the Atlanta Braves chaplain, and he's joining us right now on Sports Spectrum. Hey, Terry Evans, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you have quite the unique story as a former player, now chaplain. But I think the team that you're associated with in terms of being a chaplain with the Atlanta Braves, we have to start there.
Yeah.
Because now it's forever etched in stone that they are the 2021 world champion Atlanta Braves.
Yeah.
Can't just be Atlanta Braves anymore. What was it like being around that team this year as a chaplain? I don't even know what the access that you had was as far as COVID and things changing. And I know that's an evolving thing that's still kind of taking place as we record this. But what was this year like, kind of being around that team, discipling them and encouraging them?
Yeah, man. And you're right. It's just like most people all over the world, things have been different post-COVID than they were pre-COVID. And that includes being chaplain.
Yeah.
Access has been, limited a good bit, and for good reason. I understand the safety protocols and stuff like that. I'm very grateful that Major League Baseball, allowed us to come on Sundays. And so I didn't get to see the team as much throughout this week. I did see them on Sundays. We had great participation when I was there. The guys are very supportive, very encouraging. But it was a different kind of season as far as access. I would have loved to have gotten to spend more time with the guys, the kind of time that I got to spend in previous years. But hopefully that'll be the case in the upcoming seasons. But as far as this season in particular, especially them winning the World Series, it was funny. I texted a couple of the guys afterward, after the series, and just to congratulate them, and we were texting back and forth just about, it felt like two totally different seasons. They felt like one team all the way up to the trade deadline.
Yes.
And then some great moves were made, added some key players. And then from about, from early September on, it was a different team, and they were a lot of fun to watch. So
yeah,
super happy for those guys, man.
Yeah, it was such a cool thing to watch them make their run. And I remember we had Dansby Swanson on about a year ago in the off season of 2020 into 2021, and he talked about they had gotten to Game 7 of the NLCS, lost in Game 7. I think Dansby hit a homer in that game, and it was like, are you able to find joy in the midst of losing such a tough game like that? And he was going through and kind of peeled back some of the layers of some of the things that he had worked through in his faith and some of the mental health things that he was going through. And he talked about how that game still irked him, but it wasn't where he was finding his identity in, right?
Yeah.
But still, as the competitor, that game always was remaining there. And for them to kind of come full circle and make it to the World Series and then win it all, I mean, so cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, and they had to beat the absolute best to win the World Series. They had to, they had to go in there and beat the Dodgers, and then back it up and beat the Astros. And those are two really, really good teams. But I mean, I think you could tell just by watching them, there wasn't any sort of intimidation. There wasn't. They knew that they had a good team. They knew that they were playing some good baseball, and just really fun to watch them. Take it to the Dodgers and Astros a little bit. And Dansby in particular, I've had a good relationship with him over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of talks about exactly what you just said, how easy it is for all professional athletes to, everything in the game is pushing you to have this false identity that, is based on your performance, what the media is saying about you, what social media is saying about you, and there's this fake identity that's built up.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, you start believing that is who you really are. And Dansby's one of those guys. We've had lots of conversations about that, and I think he's got a great head on his shoulders, had a great, playoffs and series, and super happy for him.
Now, I didn't know this. You and I, as we talked beforehand and just kind of going over logistics and what time to tape the interview and record, you kind of just gave me a heads up on something. You said, Jason, I just want you to know that I didn't go to the World Series games. And I was like, well, I don't think that'll affect the conversation. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, all right, we got to hear the story of why.
Yeah, man.
And it wasn't because of access. It wasn't because of COVID or anything like that. It was something even more special, I think.
Yeah, it's almost like I got to make a confession here, because I everybody's asking me, "Oh man, the World Series, that must have been so amazing," and it was. I watched, and it was an amazing experience. But yes, I was not even in town for it. It's funny. My oldest son Asher, he's 12 years old, about to turn 13. And me and my father-in-law had been talking for a while, and we were planning just a hunting trip for him, kind of, almost like a coming-of-age hunting trip for me and my son. And we had planned it a few months before. It just happened like this was the only weekend that would work for my father-in-law in the fall. And I was like, looking at my calendar, I'm like, that should be all right. Just don't know. Just didn't even think about when the playoffs would be and World Series or any of that.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know it, it ended up being the exact weekend that the Braves come in town for Game 3, 4, and 5. And so we saw Game 1 and Game 2 against Houston, obviously on TV because it was in Houston. And then as they come into town, me and my son are heading off to Colorado to go on a hunting trip. And so to make matters even worse, I guess, as far as being a chaplain, like Game 5 was on a Sunday. Like we had chapel.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we got a great guy who works alongside of me. He does the Spanish side of things, John Bell.
Yeah.
He was in town, and so he just went in there and led chapel for the guys. And I gave the guys a heads up, obviously, that I wasn't going to be there. But, yes, I've had to tell that story many, many times that I wasn't even around for it. But it was a very memorable trip with my son, one that we will never forget. So I can't sit here and say that I regret not being there.
Yeah.
And if anything, man, it's one of those things that I kind of hope communicates something to the players that, hey, I'm super, super happy for you guys. But as we all know, there are more important things in life than baseball.
Yeah, or baseball. For sure. Were you able to get back and watch Game 6 on TV?
That's what makes it even worse, man. Like we were off the grid.
You were off the grid.
We were off the grid,
you couldn't
man.
even go back to a place where you could watch it.
There was like one mountain on the backside of the property we could climb up to, so I could go up there and check the box scores every night and pay attention to what was going on.
So that's how you found out that they won?
Man, it sounds terrible. So there was a part of me, we were going down the mountain the day of what would have been Game 7.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I definitely wanted the guys to go ahead and win, but there was like a selfish part of me that was like, well, if this goes 7, we'll be back in Durango at the time. That was the closest city. We're going to spend the night there. I was like, well, we can watch Game 7 in Durango. That'd be awesome.
That's so crazy.
But I was obviously not disappointed to find out they won in 6.
So you weren't back in Atlanta for the parade either yet?
We flew back the day of the parade. So yeah, I missed that as well.
Wow. But still, what a cool experience to be able to be a part of a team that wins it all. What is discipleship from your perspective? What did it look like this year? Obviously, you have chapel on Sundays. Mm-hmm. Are there Bible studies? Are there one-on-one time that you have with some of the guys that you're able to pour into them? What does that look like maybe this year? And then give us maybe an overarching view of what that's looked like in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll start with the past. In the past, again, with more access, I was there every Sunday to do, kind of like a formal chapel service for the home team and visiting team and the umpires. And then, but usually Sunday, it's a day game. It's always a travel day for somebody, if not both teams. So Sunday's pretty quick, 20 minutes in and out. Usually what would happen in the past is I would come during the week as well, and we'd have a much longer time together, about an hour together, come early, nobody's in a rush. And those were some good times together. And then throughout the week, I would just come and hang out and just be available. Obviously, all that's different now. There was more one-on-one type stuff this year through Zoom. That's actually been one of the, I would say kind of a good thing that has happened post-COVID is that everyone has gotten so used to using that medium. You invite someone into a Zoom meeting now, everybody knows what that is. And we were doing that pre-COVID, trying to disciple guys in that way just because players are spread out all over the place. And so post-COVID, it's helped because everybody's so used to that medium. Mm-hmm. So that's where, I'm meeting with guys, and given the nature of the organization I work with, it's not just Braves guys, but I'm meeting with players throughout the week, whether in groups or one-on-one through Zoom. And it's definitely not as good as being face-to-face with each other, but it works.
But it's access at least.
It's access.
Yeah.
And again, it's something we're all used to and we're getting comfortable with. And so right now, that is primarily how we're meeting with players.
So you mentioned not just the Braves chaplain, you're serving with UPI, right? Mm-hmm. Unlimited Potential Incorporated. Yeah. Tell us about what UPI is and how that serves not just one team, but really serves different players in the sport of baseball.
Yeah, for sure. UPI is, right now, we are a group of 7 former professional baseball players. And to put it simply, our entire mission is just trying to help other professional baseball players follow Jesus. Mm. And, you have to unpack that a little bit. That looks a lot of different ways. But essentially, that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to come alongside of players, guys that we can relate to. We've been in their shoes. We kind of know some of the struggles, the lifestyle. And we're just trying to help players really learn this new way of seeing the world and this new way of living life based on the life and teachings of Jesus. I mean, one of the most practical things we try to get players to understand, let's say we mentioned Dansby earlier. So it's like if you were shortstop for the Atlanta Braves. So we try to get players to understand, like, listen, think about this. I want you to think deeply about this. If Jesus was shortstop for the Atlanta Braves, like, what would his day-to-day look like? How would he interact with his teammates? How would he go about his work? Like, how would he interact with the stadium personnel on the way in? What would it look like watching him compete? How would he handle adversity? And just really reflecting on that. And not in a corny way. Not like, he would never make an error and all that stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, think about that. And then as you reflect on that, hey, let's go and try to live our life like that. And so, so we're not, the 7 of us, former players, and we're available to all players on all teams. Usually it's just through networking, just guys we know that introduce us to other guys, and we just continue to pour into anyone and everyone and try to make sure they're involved in their local church during the off season, involved in chapel, wherever they're at during the season. And so, yeah, it was a group that had a huge impact on me when I was playing. And so
we're so glad to have Terry Evans here, the Atlanta Braves chaplain on Sports Spectrum. You mentioned how an organization like UPI had an impact on you when you were playing. Mm-hmm. Let's go back a little bit, because you were a former player, or you are a former player, however the proper verbiage is there.
Were feels right.
Were is probably, well, you're not playing anymore, so there you go.
Yeah.
But you'll always be, I guess, a former player, or a guy that played in the professional league, professional baseball world, and you were a major leaguer with the Angels for a few years. You were with the Cardinals organization, the Giants, and the Royals. Baseball for you growing up, baseball for you as you came to become a professional player, when does faith or Jesus kind of intersect into that world for you?
Yeah, I grew up in South Georgia, and I went to a Christian private school. And so when you talk about when did faith come in, there's always been a foundation there. Maybe a little bit of a kind of a cultural Christianity type vibe, but I've never struggled to believe in God. But that being said, baseball was very, very important to me. And it wasn't until halfway through my career, pro career, where I was spending my third year in A-ball, which is, for anybody that knows anything about the game, that's not a good idea.
It's a long time.
And I was struggling and ready to give up. And God woke me up. He got my attention and to how I'm basically living my life. And I realized, like, what am I doing? I'm throwing away this opportunity with the way that these poor decisions I'm making. And it was the off season of 2005. I'd actually made up my mind to stop playing. I was just done with it. And God woke me up and changed my life. And I remember right before that season, I prayed and I said, you know what, Lord, you've given me the ability and the opportunity to play this game, and up to this point, I'm wasting that. And I'm yours. Whatever you want to do with me, I'm all in, and I'm in it. I mean, that was sincere. I said, if you want me to keep playing, then I trust that you'll help me have a good season, and I'll keep playing. If you want me to do something else, then I trust that I'll have another bad season, and I'll be done, and I'm fine with it. And I meant that. And to be honest with you, I just kind of assumed I was going to have another bad season, but at least I was going to do it the right way.
Right.
And, dude, as it turns out, man, like, I had the best season of my career and ended up in the big leagues the next year, just like that. And God was very gracious in that regard. And I'm not saying it was a cakewalk from there and on out, but I did play 7 more years. Shortly after that, I tore my labrum. I'm in Arizona rehabbing a shoulder injury. I was an outfielder, but I tore it sliding. And that's where Brian Hummel, who's the chaplain for the Arizona Diamondbacks, he was my chaplain in the fall league the year before. He found out I was there rehabbing. He reached out to me, basically just befriended me. I'm there just hanging out, not much to do. Invited me. He said, hey, would you like to just walk through Scripture together? We could maybe read the Gospel of John and just meet once a week and talk about it. And again, I kind of grew up in church. I grew up around like the Christian subculture. No one had ever asked me to do that. And I was like, that sounds great. Yeah, I'm down for that. And that started a relationship that carried on for the next 3 years, where he's mentoring me and showing me what it looks like to really follow Jesus and how to do that in the game of baseball.
Wow.
And it changed my entire career, the way I viewed my career. And we now, through the grace of God, we get to work together.
So before we talk about how you become a team chaplain, because that's in itself is probably, I'm guessing, I could be wrong, that wasn't something you were thinking about. You want to be a devoted follower of Christ, but chaplain is a different animal, right? It's kind of like becoming a pastor. That's a different animal. But I do got to hear your Major League Baseball debut story. And when you get called to the show and you get that opportunity, we've talked to many baseball players, both here at where we're doing this interview and even over Zoom and other places on the show. And it's just every player has their own unique story. And it's the story they'll never forget. It's always the story, the first time they get called to the show, put that uniform on, and get in a game. What's your story?
Yeah, man. It's 2007. I'm having a good season. 2006 was the year I told you I had a great season. 2007, I'm in AAA at Salt Lake City, having a good season. Garrett Anderson, outfitter for the Angels at the time, he ends up getting injured. and we're in Portland, Oregon, getting ready for a game. I just taken BP. Why they didn't tell me before BP, I don't know. Manager calls me over and just gives me the good news that, hey man, you're going to meet the team in LA. And the funny part about that, he's like, your flight leaves in 2 hours. I'm like, oh my goodness. So now I got to scramble. I got to go back to the hotel, get all my stuff. I think I can't recall. I think I called everybody in my family. I mean, it's just me and my parents and my sister, but I think I called everybody individually and nobody answered. I called Tanner, who was my wife now. She was my fiance at the time.
Yeah.
But just trying to tell him the good news. We had one game left in LA against the Dodgers, and my dad was scrambling around trying to get a flight out there, because it was Father's Day weekend too, which was kind of cool.
From Georgia?
From Georgia, yeah.
Okay.
Scrambling, trying to get a last-minute flight. He gets out there, makes it in time. My first game, I get put in the ninth inning, and I faced Jonathan Broxton back when he was closing for the Dodgers.
Yeah,
and
he was very good.
I was ready. He threw me 3 heaters. He threw them right by me. I swung at all 3, struck out, went out to right field, and I kid you not, the first thought I had in my mind was, I have a big league stat. I struck out, but I have a big league stat.
0 for 1.
I made it. Yeah. And so I was good with it. It's like the only time in my life I've been okay with a strikeout.
Yeah.
Cool part about that story is, we're back home a few days later. Again, it's Father's Day weekend. My dad's in the stands. And, yeah, man, I guess the highlight of my big league career. It's my first at-bat in Anaheim. I get a 2-0 pitch from Wandy Rodriguez and hit a 2-run homer for my first major league hit. My dad's in the stands. They end up calling him into the booth in the 5th inning to interview him.
Wow.
Afterwards, on SportsCenter the next day, they showed like a split screen of me and my dad. Really cool moment. And if you knew my dad, like, he hates that attention. Like, he wants no part of that. And so I wasn't married at the time, so I was only up for a week. We exhausted our bullpen. They had to make a move. I was the guy that went down. So it was short, but it was a week where I wasn't married yet. So Tanner wasn't with me. And so it was just me and my dad hanging out. And so it's a week I will never, ever forget.
Wow.
So,
did you get the ball?
I did get the ball. Yeah.
Nice.
It's at my house and hanging up on this, in a little ball case.
So did like a clubhouse attendant grab it, or did the fan catch it and you did like a little trade or something?
Yeah, it bounced into the stands, and so the bullpen was very gracious. The bullpen, I don't know exactly what they had to trade, probably not too much, but they were able to
Here's
talk
another
to the
ball
fan.
or a bat or
sign
something.
something for the fan or something. He gave it. So
That's pretty cool. That's hard to get. Not everybody gets, I think, an opportunity to have that, and you did.
Yeah, man.
So I'm taking you through your baseball career quickly, and let's go back to where you kind of ended with, ending up serving with UPI. Your career ended in baseball in 2012, and you joined UPI, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're a chaplain, I don't think, when you join UPI. So when or how does the idea of becoming a chaplain for the Braves take shape? Because you had just finished playing, and suddenly you found yourself as a chaplain in the clubhouse, mentoring and teaching guys about the word a year after you play with them.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Yeah, and it's funny. So that, again, 2008 is when I tore my labrum, and Brian Hommel is that relationship started.
Yeah.
And again, that set me on a new trajectory for my career. And it got to the point where, 2010 and 2011, I'm leading Bible studies for our team, and I'm finding a ton of joy in that. I'm beginning to find just as much joy in having a really good conversation with a teammate as I am, getting a couple hits that night.
Yeah.
And so I believe that's when, God's kind of stirring my heart that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, this is what I'm passionate about. 2011 was probably the worst season of my career, just on the field, not off the field, but I played terrible. I got released by the Giants. Found myself back in AA, what was supposed to be just a real short time until they made room in AAA. But I get to AA. It's the first time I've been in AA in like 6 years. Wow. It's like I forgot how to play baseball, man. I was terrible. So I got no excuses. I just played terrible. It was an awful season. Yeah. Ended up breaking my hand to finish the season. And so 2011 was rough. And there was even some details I've left out. But I remember going into that off season a little upset, like that could have been it. That was quick. And if that's the way my career ended, that's 10 years. Like that's a tough way to end. And I remember praying like, Lord, if you want me to be done, I'm fine with that. but I want you to make it easy on me. And so if I'm supposed to be done, I ask that no teams would call me, that nobody calls.
Wow.
And nobody called until several weeks before camp started. Dayton Moore with the Kansas City Royals, GM of the Royals.
One of the great GMs, by the way, in baseball.
Absolutely.
And great guys.
Nothing but respect for Dayton, and he was such a blessing to my family. He called me, and he called me, not my agent, just called me personally, mentioned that they're going to have a young team in AAA, knew that he graciously was like, I know what kind of guy you are. I'd love to bring you into that clubhouse. I don't know how much playing time we can guarantee you, but I just want you to be there to pour into those guys. And as soon as he said that, I was like, I am all in for that. That is exactly what I would like to do. And fortunately, I had a good spring training playing-wise, so that was nice to play well. To start the season in AAA, was playing well, and then I had another season-ending injury. I slipped a vertebrae in my back, and I was done. But because of why Dayton and the Royals signed me, they didn't send me to Arizona. They just left me there in Omaha to be with the guys. And it was one of my favorite seasons of my entire career, just trying to pour into young guys, just trying to be very intentional. And I knew in that moment, this is what I want to do. And UPI was looking to bring someone on staff. They needed to replace someone in Atlanta. I was already in Atlanta. And so I retired from baseball in September 2012 after the minor league season, started with UPI October 2012. And again, the way God works things out, Baseball Chapel was also looking to replace the chaplain in Atlanta at the time. Had a need there. I think there was a little bit of hesitation at first because I was 31. It was going to be my first year out of the game. Like, is this too soon for him?
Right.
Fortunately, they took a gamble and decided to put me in there as chaplain. So yeah, my first year out of the game, I found myself back in the clubhouse as chaplain, which definitely was a little weird.
And that team, if I'm remembering, my brain kind of goes into Rain Man mode when I think about who was on the team and when. Was Chipper still on the team when you got there? He had just finished. And Freddie was still there.
Freddie was
Freeman,
there.
Right?
You got Tim Hudson was there. Huddy was great.
So some veterans.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was some veterans. It was an old I'm younger than some
You're
of the guys
younger
on the
than
team.
a lot of these guys. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, a little intimidating that route. But you got guys like Huddy who were great. Immediately, when you get a player to come in and confirm like, hey, this is our chaplain, this is my guy.
You're our guy.
He has your back like that. It goes a long way. And Freddie's been that way too. I don't mind saying that. Like, Freddie's been from day one, super supportive, involved. That's great. And I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. And what a season he had, huh?
Oh, I know. I mean, he's one of the best, man. And I know people know that, but he's so consistent and such an amazing player. And, I think sometimes maybe overlooked because he's not too flashy, just goes about his business. But one of the best players I've ever seen. Yeah,
and I'm glad that he got that chance to win a title.
Absolutely.
And, with his family and certainly the team and that he came up with, and such a cool moment. Thanks for being here, man. This is awesome, and I love your story. Leave us with this. Leave us with some encouragement, because we could go into like what was it like before COVID and after, and the access and all that. But the word is the word, right? It doesn't change. It's living and active. Those listening, what encouragement would you have for them now? We're in 2022. It's a new year, and just thinking about kind of maybe where God has you, and maybe just share kind of what's on your heart for our audience, and be encouraged, for them to be encouraged as we wind down here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I'd like to encourage us all with is I think sometimes we feel this enormous pressure that we got to do these super big things, and that if we don't do this super big thing, then we're not doing enough. And I can feel that way too. Again, this year as a chaplain, I'm like, I got 15 minutes on a Sunday, and I'm not going to see these guys again for 2 weeks. I better knock it out of the park. What am I going to? Yeah, what am I going to do?
I got to go 4 for 4.
And one thing that being a chaplain over the last several years, God has taught me is, you know what, Terry, stop worrying so much about fruitfulness, and just focus on faithfulness. Just be faithful with what God has put right in front of you. And if nothing else, when you show up at that park, may those guys know that a man of God has been among them. And I think that's given me a ton of encouragement, where my focus is, you know what, today I'm just going to try to be as faithful as I can to what God has called me to do today, what he's put in front of me today, the people he's put in my life today. and I'm just not going to get caught up with the fruitfulness of it all. The Holy Spirit will do his part. My part's just to be faithful.
Yeah, that's good. Faithfulness. Thanks, Terry. Appreciate you. Thanks for being here on the show.
Yeah, man. Appreciate the opportunity.
And many thanks to Terry Evans for being here today on Sports Spectrum. What a story he has, and what a role he has when you think about the ability to pastor and chaplain a World Series championship team, and the story of how he missed watching the World Series, at least the end of the World Series, was pretty crazy when you think about it, but a memory that he won't forget that he got to make with his son. So we appreciate Terry for being here on Sports Spectrum. We thank you as well for tuning in. Make sure you go to check out our website each and every day, sportspectrum.com. Tons of free content there. Articles, devotionals, and podcasts, all available at the website, sportspectrum.com. Again, go there every day because there's new content updated each and every day. And you can sign up for our Sports Spectrum weekly newsletter as well, right there on the website. It'll be one email that comes to your inbox every single week to update you on every story, every podcast, every devotional that you may have missed each week at sportspectrum.com. You can sign up right there, click the newsletter icon, put your email address in, and you are good to go over at sportspectrum.com. All right, thanks for tuning in. We love you guys. We'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.